Hi everyone, my name is Renee, Program Officer with EcoSchools Canada. On behalf of EcoSchools, thank you for being this webinar as part of our 2023 EcoSummit. I'm pleased to introduce Natalie Graveline and Laura Pekkola from Inside Education to present this webinar, Beyond the Blue Bin, School-Based Action for Young Environmental Leaders. Inside Education is an Alberta-based environment and natural resource education charitable society. They have been supporting teachers and inspiring students to think critically about natural resource topics since 1985. With their full suite of no-cost teaching resources, youth summits, in-class and field programs, and full scholarship professional development programs, Inside Education makes experiential environmental education accessible to schools across Alberta. Natalie Graveline is Education Programs Lead based in Edmonton, and her professional passion is sharing her excitement about nature with students. She has a background in conservation biology and secondary education, and has found her dream job in a place where she can be the fun class guest and teach the topic she loves the most. Born and raised in Alberta, Natalie loves the summer in Edmonton, cats, camping, and knitting, and her favorite field trip activity is pond dipping. Laura Pekkola is Education Programs Lead based in Edmonton. Her passion in environmental and natural resource education is connecting students to their communities and the natural world through experiences. She found her place in environmental education as the perfect way to share her background in wildlife biology, forest ecology, and environmental management with students and get them excited about nature. Having grown up in Ontario and Finland before arriving in Alberta, Laura loves to learn about Alberta's landscapes, both with students at work, as well as on her own time, walking her dogs and camping. We would also like to acknowledge that the EcoSummit has been made possible with support from Natural Resources Canada. We're glad to have you join us for this presentation, and now I will pass it over to Laura and Natalie.
Thank you so much, Renee. So great to join or to be here with everyone today. So as Renee mentioned, my name is Laura and I'm here with Natalie, and we are going to be talking a little bit about how school-based action for young environmental leaders can happen, especially around climate education. So I'm going to kick us off by acknowledging where we are. So Natalie and myself, we are joining from what we now know as Edmonton, Alberta, which is on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional lands of the Cree, the Dene, the Blackfoot, the Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux peoples, as well as part of Métis Region 4 here in Alberta. So I know we have people joining from all across the country, so I invite you to consider and acknowledge the land that you are on, and just remember that this land that we are all living on now and the resources that we get from the land has been cared for by people for thousands of years, and that history has allowed for the nature around us to be available for us as well. So big piece of why we have this beautiful land that we have to share together. So today we are going to be talking about climate change as a topic that connects across all of natural resource topics, and it's a very motivating topic for instilling change and action, especially in students. So many of us have heard of actions like recycling, reducing waste, driving less. These are all ways that we know we can have an impact on climate change around us in a positive way. And they are super, super important as we take steps towards climate action. But what if you're already doing all of that and you want to do more? You want to move beyond putting things in the blue bin. So that's what we'll be covering today. So we will give you some inspiration and resources to help you get started on taking action in your class, in your school, or even your community and beyond. So there truly is no step that's too small, and there's a spot for everyone along this kind of climate action continuum. So to kick off, in order to take action around climate change, it is super important for us to understand what it actually is. So we're going to warm up with some climate change myth busting so that we can all make sure we're on the same page. I'm going to be putting up some myths onto the screen, and if you're joining with a group, you can have a little in-group competition or just keep track for yourself to see what your knowledge of climate change is. But these are just some of the common myths that we have found when we talk about climate change with students and adults across Canada. So the first myth is that weather and climate are the same thing. Well, this is completely a myth. Weather is the short-term atmospheric conditions in any given place at a given time. So these include things like temperature, maybe air quality, humidity, precipitation on any given day. Climate, on the other hand, is the average weather of a region over a long period of time. So we're really looking at long-term changes and trends. A lot of the time you might hear, especially here in Canada, like, oh man, it snowed in June. There's no way climate change is real. That's not the earth warming at all. But even though we do have these odd days or weeks or even years that are kind of colder than normal, climate change is a longer term and bigger scale trend than that. So even when we have these funny snowy days in June, that still is, it's not proof that climate change doesn't exist. So that's an important piece to remember. Our next myth is that the greenhouse effect is a good natural process. So this actually is a fact. So the greenhouse effect is the process that occurs when heat from the sun gets trapped by gases in the Earth's atmosphere, making Earth a livable planet. If it wasn't for those greenhouse gases in our atmosphere, it would be way too cold for us to survive on Earth. And yeah, we wouldn't be here. The problem with the greenhouse effect is that humans are adding more greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, which is kind of exacerbating that greenhouse effect. So it means that the atmosphere is trapping even more heat, causing the climate to warm. And that warming is where we see the problems with climate change arising. Final myth. Canada emits, or myth busting, Canada emits far less greenhouse gases than other countries like the US, China, and India. So climate change isn't our responsibility. Well, this, of course, is a myth. It is true that Canada as a country emits less greenhouse gases than some other countries. But when you look at our per capita emissions, they are some of the highest in the world. We have a lot of heating requirements, a lot of transport requirements, and we do make a lot of natural resources or extract a lot of natural resources, which takes a lot of energy and emits greenhouse gases. We also use a lot of products that come from other countries. So they are made in other countries. So these emissions for making those products might not even be counted in Canada's greenhouse gas emissions, but they are part of our personal impacts on greenhouse gas emissions and climate change. So all countries are part of the puzzle, and especially places like Canada, where we have such a high per capita emission rate. And because we have, in general, a level of development and income that we can make investments and concrete changes towards fighting climate change. So we are a really important piece of that puzzle, regardless of what numbers people might be throwing at us. So now that we're kind of on the same page in terms of some of these climate change myths, let's take a look at how climate change can actually affect us here in Canada. This is actually another misconception that because we're not, like some of us don't live near the ocean, we don't have to worry about like oceans rising. So climate change isn't really going to affect us here in Canada. Like, wouldn't it actually be kind of great if our cold winter days were just a little bit warmer? Like, how could that be a bad thing? Well, it goes beyond that. There are lots of different effects that climate change can have, but a couple that we might want to consider are glacial retreat. Again, here in Canada, not many of us live near glaciers, but there are places, like here in Edmonton, for example, our drinking water comes from the glaciers in the Rocky Mountains. So if those glaciers recede too far or disappear altogether, that's going to be a huge problem for many populations along the rivers that go through the prairies, because that's the headwaters of those rivers. So glacial recession can directly impact many of us. Another thing is pests and diseases. So insects, they have evolved to live in certain temperatures, and the plants that they live off of have also evolved in these specific temperatures and climates. When our climate is changing, it creates a new kind of environment that is maybe a little bit unbalanced and can cause pests, so insects or diseases, to really increase in population and really cause more damage. Some pests that you may have heard of in your area, maybe you've heard of mountain pine beetle, spruce budworm, maybe gypsy moth, forest tent caterpillar. These are all insects that can balloon in population with these changes in climate. So definitely something to look out for, especially when we're looking at our forests and our agriculture fields as well. The other thing that we really need to kind of keep an eye on with climate change is extreme weather events. So with the Earth warming and temperatures rising, droughts are kind of a maybe more obvious effect that we might see. But on the other side, we can see lots of extra flooding as well. So climate change does cause more extreme weather events, such as flooding, especially when we have really high rainfall events or really fast snow melt. The Earth can't actually soak up all that water. So even though the Earth is in a way getting drier and hotter, we can still end up with floods being a problem. And then, of course, that drier weather can make our wildfires a little stronger, bigger, and happen more frequently. So those warm, dry summers can definitely contribute to increased wildfires. In the boreal forest, wildfires are totally natural, and we expect them to happen on a cycle. But now that the wood can end up really, really dry, and we get hotter temperatures earlier in the spring, wildfires are kind of growing in size and intensity. So these are all some pretty good reasons to focus on climate change. So I'll pass it over to Natalie to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so now that we are all kind of on the same page about what climate change is and isn't, why it's important to learn about, I want to talk a little bit now about why climate change is a great fit for school-based action projects. And that's kind of what we're going to spend the rest of this presentation talking about, why they're a great fit, and sort of some suggestions and hopefully some inspiration for what some schools that we're familiar with have done around climate change in their schools and communities. So why do we want to focus on climate, and why do we want to encourage you to focus on climate? Well, the first reason is because of this idea of multiple perspectives. So we at Inside Education are always trying to focus on multiple perspectives when we are looking at a problem, and climate change is a great place for this because it is a big opportunity for cross-curricular discussions and critical thinking. Climate issues can be addressed from so many different angles that no matter what your interest is, you can find a place for yourself. It isn't just a science problem, it is a mathematical problem, a social problem, a communications problem, all these different things. So no matter what teachers or students are interested in, because we can come at it from these multiple perspectives, climate change is a really great one to tackle. Also, climate change is really complex. So this kind of relates. Climate change is kind of conceptually difficult to address, but that's kind of scary and intimidating, but that also means that any small piece can be examined and explored, and we just know that our work is part of the bigger picture. We sometimes call climate change a wicked problem, and it's not just that it's difficult, even though it kind of is. It means that there's no discernible stopping point. It's kind of a frontier, like space travel. We're never gonna have explored all of space. There are so many people, organizations, and institutions working on multiple aspects of it, and we are just trying to make the world better and more resilient on an ongoing basis. We're never gonna just solve climate change. And with that in mind, there's a lot of focus nowadays on this idea of the 21st century learner. Students aren't just going to school to learn facts. They're going to become more complete human beings, to learn how to be communicators, globally aware, self-directed, problem solvers, financially and economically literate, all these different things that, we hope to do to become better, more well-rounded people and citizens. And addressing topics related to climate change is a great way to do this because it incorporates all these different little gear graphics to help, address this problem. Another reason to focus on climate is because it is a current topic. It is a current problem. I know lots of students have this feeling that the things they learn in school aren't applicable to the real world, but climate change is something that is absolutely applicable. It is a topic that is in the news and it is happening now. I know that when I was in school, we talked a lot about climate change as something that was going to be happening in the future to kind of future us, but it is happening now. So this gives students a chance to work on something that has real world applications and that is bigger than just a school assignment. And a great example of this is the COP27, which took place in November in Egypt. And the focus there was not just on the UN Environment Program Emissions Gap Report, but also on the role of youth in our climate future. So this isn't just a Canada or an Alberta problem, it's a global problem and it's on the forefront. You can see by some of these headlines that financing climate solutions and the green economy are on the front of mind for world leaders. So, it's not just something that, an assignment in school that you're not going to think about again. It's something that global leaders are talking about right now as we speak. Another reason to focus on climate in the classroom and for projects is because it is an emotional topic. So discussing climate can be kind of a tough one. Students can feel really overwhelmed, and this can lead to inaction or despair or even apathy. So asking students about their concerns and helping them turn that into a project or a focus in the classroom can really help empower students. This helps help them develop coping skills and to manage feelings of negativity. And something that we at Inside Education kind of specifically try to do is to focus in on the amazing things that are already happening in our province and across the country. I've heard from young people before that sometimes they feel like climate change is a problem that they've been left to solve, which isn't the attitude that, we want to propagate. So something we really love to focus on are the solutions that are already happening. And so here are actually a couple examples we just quickly want to share of some cool kind of innovations that are happening. So the first one is here in Alberta, where Laura and I are located, and it is something called carbon capture, utilization, and storage. So what this is when oil and gas companies or energy companies take the carbon dioxide byproducts of producing and refining and extracting oil and gas, and instead of letting it go out into the atmosphere, they actually recapture it, and they either are able to utilize it again, or they're actually able to sequester it down in the bedrock. And this is something that people are talking about a lot here in Alberta, and it's just a really cool and innovative solution to this problem of carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere. Another really awesome example from this actually particular picture is from Ontario, but these exist in lots of places, is something called solar glass. So this picture is an example of solar glass being used in an Ontario greenhouse. And what we're really doing here is tripling our use of the sun as a natural resource. So not only is the sun helping the plants grow, it's warming up the inside of the greenhouse, but with these fancy solar panel glass solar panels, it's also producing electricity. So that can help additionally heat up the greenhouse on those colder days. It can be put back into the grid to be used. But the point is that we're able to, the sun is able to shine through. And so you're able to use the light and the heat from the sun, as well as make electricity from it, which is pretty cool. And there are so many projects like this happening all across the country that, when we kind of have this concern that, climate change is this insurmountable problem or nobody's doing anything about it, it's just not the case. There's so many cool things happening out there, and people are trying to solve this problem. Last but not least, our biggest reason for focusing on climate is it engages students to think critically and get involved. So this is the biggest opportunity as far as we're concerned. By creating meaningful discussions about climate change in a way that engages students to think critically, creatively, and encourage them to get involved, it's allowing them to make a difference. It's allowing them to take the lead on projects that they care about. It's allowing them to try new things and, kind of extend their power and influence beyond the classroom, and really kind of set them up for a future of being, global citizens, civically engaged, all these things. So by focusing in on these climate projects, it's really inviting students to come into their own and take the lead on these really cool projects. So all of this sounds so great, but you might wonder, okay, this is something I want to do. Where do I get started? This is a huge thing. And for that, I'm going to pass it back over to Laura.
Yeah, thanks, Natalie. So lots of good reasons to start on climate action and these projects. But where can you start? Like, you might be thinking, our school's not ready to be going to these COP summits or anything like that, but there is a spot for all of us in terms of taking action when it comes to these climate change projects. So we can kind of talk about this road to action and stewardship, which has many entry points. And we want to talk a little bit about what some of these entry points could look like. So at the beginning, we already talked about personal action and how personal action pieces such as, again, recycling or driving less, reducing our waste, those are all great places to start. So if you or the people around you are not quite maximizing that piece, that's a great place to start, just to kind of get us connected to what the problem is and what the solutions can be as well. And then that might that might help you find a group of people who are interested in the same thing, or maybe it's your class. So a class or a club can start on a project of some sort to kind of get the ball rolling a little further. So on the right on the screen, you can see a picture of, these are grade 5 students who are holding anti-idling signs. So that was something that the class thought was a really important topic in their school. They were tired of moving past or walking past the front of their school as they left to go home and just smelling all that exhaust from the cars that were waiting to pick other students up. So in Edmonton now, we actually have an anti-idling bylaw citywide in front of schools where you aren't allowed to idle your cars. And that was actually started by a group of students who exactly that, wanted to make a change. So these class projects can then actually balloon outside of our schools and into the community as well, just from kind of picking a problem or a topic that there is interest in. You can actually, you can also take these projects and connections and expand that into considering careers as well. So that might be a ways down the road for some of you, or it might be on your minds right now. But by connecting with professionals, you can actually consider some careers, try out some skills, and in that way, you can actually continue having that stewardship and climate action in your future by working in a field that allows you to make a difference. So right now, we're going to focus in on 3 examples of schools that we have worked with that have gotten projects rolling, and what that has meant for their school and what has allowed those to be successful as well. So this example is from Eastern Alberta. This high school, they realized that paper towels in the garbage created a lot of waste. So the group, the EnviRoyals, they did a lot of research on how much energy switching from paper towels to environmentally friendly or energy efficient hand dryers could actually save. So they went through, they did the research, they came up with numbers, and then they provided those numbers to their school administration, which allowed the school administration to then make that decision in terms of, yes, of course, this makes sense both environmentally, but also financially as well in the long run. I love the picture that's on the top right of this screen because it shows the impact. So in just less than 2 hours, the garbage can went from half full to completely full of paper towels just in the regular use on a school day. So by being able to document things with images and like create these visuals, which really show the impact, that can be a way to then spread your message a little bit further and kind of grow the support for whatever project you have. So in this case, the research and the photos were a great way to kind of get this project rolling. And then they've expanded, this club has then expanded to also put in aquaponic tanks and solar chargers in their school as well. So kind of showing how one project can then like start the ball rolling into multiple projects. Another school that we've worked with, New Murnum School, has fabricated some zero emission vehicles in their school. So it all started with the question at their school, can electrical technologies help the village of Murnum transition from petroleum-based energy sources to more alternative and renewable sources and also increase their energy efficiency? Well, that's a big question to tackle right off the bat. So they decided to kind of shrink that problem down to something that they could work on a little bit more tangibly in class. So you might be wondering, why is there a picture of a hamster on that screen? Well, that was their first step at looking at power generation. So what they did was they actually got a hamster and a hamster wheel for the grade 5-6 class. And they were looking at how the hamster could actually produce, generate energy and see what that efficiency looked like and how it could work. Because then that was easier to then expand up to, say, a human generator, maybe a bike generator, something like that, which then could be translated to these electric vehicles. So by starting from kind of a more tangible, small scale and making it something that was hands-on, everyone could be involved with, really allowed for this project to start growing. So now this school, they did then eventually get these golf carts, electric golf carts that they retrofitted with solar and other renewable energies to power them. And it is now like their junior and senior high shop project to work on these renewable energy projects. So by bringing it into the classroom and into the projects and that were needed to be done for specific classes, they were really able to focus in on this question and still get that school work done and get credits for it as well. The final example I have is the Lacombe Composite High School EcoVision. So this is a team that's been around for a long time now, and they have like a goat barn on their schoolyard, as well as a geodesic dome, greenhouse, bee boxes. They have lots of different projects on the go. So what has made them really successful, and I think also translates to the other projects that we've talked about as well, are 5 main kind of things to try and hit in order to make your project successful. First piece is that it was all youth led. So all of this started from youth going to their teachers or administration saying, hey, we noticed this thing and we want to make a difference. So once the ideas start coming from students, it's very relevant to the rest of the student body as well. And it really helps get the momentum going within the school, which is super important. The next piece is that it's really important to just take one bite at a time. These small steps allow for small successes and checkpoints along the way and help keep that energy going. It can be really daunting to like figure out starting from maybe not having much at your school to like, we're going to bring goats to our schoolyard. That's a big step to take, but there are lots of little things along the way that we can celebrate. It's so, so important to celebrate those successes along the way so that we don't lose interest. Third piece is keeping it positive. So focusing on the solutions and what we as students and as the school community can do right now is so, so valuable. It can be it can be a very challenging topic to think about climate effects. But when we look at the solutions that we can put into place right now and see the changes we're making, that is so valuable. And again, can really just keep that momentum going. Act local, be relevant to your own school community. Depending on where you are, you're going to have different interests and challenges that your school is facing. Embrace those and then bring those into your project planning. No project is going to look the same from one school to another, and that's okay. So work with what you've got and also make it unique, make it yours, because then it will really stick. Finally, involve the school and the community around the school as well. It might start in a club or it might start in one single class, but they do find their way to, these projects can find their way into the school community at large. And then also once you are able to reach out to the community and make partnerships that way, it really, really helps these projects have a long-term lifespan. Now, when it comes to reaching out to experts in your community, how do you actually go about doing that? Again, that can be a little bit of a daunting step, but we've worked a lot with connecting students and experts in various fields to each other, and it is so, so successful, and experts love getting this asked. So some examples of ways that you could get an expert involved in the community to kind of make those connections a little bit deeper are shown on the screen there. You can ask them to come in as a guest speaker, to run some sort of like mini workshop for your class if it's relevant. You could set up roundtable discussions, which is almost like a little speed dating event where students get to go around, talk to lots of different experts in a short amount of time. You could also ask for site tours. Maybe there's, say, a greenhouse or something that is doing something that you might want to implement at your school. Go visit them, ask them questions. Seeing how these projects can be set up elsewhere can really give some ideas on what to do in our own schoolyards. And then also connect with your local government. There are lots of resources within government, and they often will have some ideas of who to direct you to if they don't know how to help. So just ask. Put out the ask to your community, to the experts around, and people do love to share with students. So to wrap this up, we're going to talk a little bit about how Inside Education can support you specifically to kind of leave you with some resources before we go.
Great. Thanks, Laura. So yeah, I'm just going to talk a little bit now briefly about Inside Education as an organization. So I think as was mentioned up at the top, we are a nonprofit charity that does environmental and natural resource education. We are based out of Alberta, and much of the work we do is based in and around Alberta. But we definitely have some things that could be relevant for teachers all across the country, teachers and students all across the country. And so here on this slide just has a little bit about us and kind of what we believe in. So things like experiential learning to enrich the curriculum, this idea that we've kind of talked about a lot of paying attention to what's happening in the future, what's coming down the pipe, what kinds of innovations are happening, and kind of what, you know, what the future will look like in terms of environmental and natural resource topics. We care a lot about accessibility in our programs across Alberta. So Laura and I are both based out of Edmonton, but we do many trips to other more rural parts of the province. And we have an office in Calgary who kind of covers the southern half of the province. And then finally, bringing together experts with a spectrum of perspectives. So like I kind of mentioned before, we really care about presenting multiple perspectives, finding out how lots and lots of different kinds of viewpoints all play together when it comes to these topics around natural resources. And along the bottom of the screen, there are the kind of 5 areas where we offer programming. And I just want to talk about a couple of them that can be relevant to just about anybody across the country. So first of all, our learning resources are available on our website, and they involve things like posters, videos, activities, teachers' guides, and they are all completely no cost. So just about everything Inside Education offers is completely no cost. So you can go onto our website, you can look at things like our posters, use our activities, watch our videos, as long as it's relevant and going to support your teaching or support your learning, we definitely want you to be able to use it. And on the next slide here is just an example of our electricity poster. So this is one of our print resources, but it also exists as a PDF, and it kind of outlines natural resources that we use for energy, kind of how they are utilized, and some of the positives and negatives that come along with using these different natural resources as an energy source. This one is just for the teachers, but something else that we do is our teacher professional development. So our teacher PD is really, really excellent. We get rave reviews about it. It's basically like field trips for teachers. So you get yourself to the starting point of the program, and then we take you on a bus. We cover the cost of tours, the bus, the meals, everything. And it gives you a real hands-on, firsthand look at the things kind of surrounding whatever topic the PD is about. So if you are Alberta based, we do have a watersheds and wetlands PD coming up in June, starting out of Red Deer. And so we will do site visits, we'll hear from experts, and always at the end of our PDs, we always talk about how you can take the information that you've heard, the information that you've learned, and actually apply it to your classroom. So, it's great to learn more about how, water management or wetland management or all these things work, but how can I bring this back to the classroom? We try to make sure we always incorporate that piece as well. Meanwhile, our Summer Institute, that is our longest PD of the year. It takes place the first week of summer. And this year it is all about energy. And so what's really special about this one this year is that it's actually open nationally. So we applications for our Summer Institute are open for teachers all across Canada. You can come to Edmonton and then learn all about energy resources, stewardship, climate change, renewables, oil and gas, all sorts of things related to energy and energy development. And there's a good chance we will be going up to Fort McMurray and seeing all sorts of cool things related to energy. And yeah, if this seems like something you'd be interested in, you should head over to our website and apply and come on this fantastic teacher field trip with us. Another thing that we at Inside Education are really, really passionate about is partnering with other organizations. So this is just sort of a a diversity of some of the websites and organizations and programs and resources that we really like to use in a lot of our programming that we are associated with, that we work with. So, they kind of have different topic areas. Some are about energy, some are about forestry, or kind of like iNaturalist is kind of a nature-based one. Some are about water. Earth Force on there is one that is all about project-based learning in the classroom, and they have a whole kind of resource section on their website about how do you choose a topic for your project, and identifying areas that are of interest to your students and problem areas that they maybe want to solve. It's really, really great, but those are all great websites. And then finally, the three that are kind of in the circle in the bottom left-hand corner with the Inside Education logo are actually grant programs that are administered by Inside Education. So Little Green Thumbs and Nutrients for Life are both school garden-based grant programs, and A+ for Energy is all about energy. So these are all for Alberta-based schools, but if you have a really great project and you have students who are passionate about it, you want to implement it, you can apply for these grants, and there's a chance you can win money to go towards making your project dream a reality. So yeah, we highly recommend any and all of these organizations for support, for finding out more about these different topics, and hopefully helping you kind of dream big when it comes to project-based learning in your school. So with that, Laura and I just want to say a great big thank you to everybody for joining us for this presentation. We hope that you found it inspiring, and we hope that you found it helpful. If you have any questions about how we support project-based learning, or how you can get started, or you want to know more about Inside Education, you can contact either of us. Our email addresses are up there. But otherwise, yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you have a really great rest of your day.